Welcome to A Reader's Paradise for book lovers, audiobook listeners, writers, and for everyone who loves a great story. Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Reader's Paradise. I'm your host, Earl Sewell, and today I have a fantastic guest for you that I'm sure you will enjoy, and I can't wait to get into that interview. However, before we do that, I want to take a moment to say, hey, leave a comment in the notes section so that other people can find the show. And please give the show a review. And if you have any suggestions for future authors, also, please just leave a suggestion and, we'll see if we can get to it. Now, before I begin, let me read to you the background of this awesome and wonderful writer. So before I begin, let me read you a little bit of the background of this wonderful author. Deliah, or D. Lawrence, is a Maryland-based attorney, author, blogger, and workshop facilitator who writes romantic suspense novels, as well as poetry and short stories. Her debut novel, Gotta Let It Go, set in Baltimore, won the 2011 Finalist Next Generation Indie Book Award in the Multicultural Fiction category. These short stories have been featured in Creatures, Crimes, and Creativity, 2013, 14, and 18 anthologies. When D isn't writing, you can find her reading a book, indulging in her hidden addiction to investigation discovery shows, or painting her yet-to-be exhibited oil artworks and landscapes, portraits, or whatever else comes to her creative mind. Constantly on the go, D is also an active member of the Maryland Writers Association, Black Writers Guild of Maryland, Sisters in Crime and Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance, and, most recently, Joel Furch's reviewer, CBS Baltimore, named D as one of the 5 Baltimore authors to put on readers' summer reading list. So without further ado, let's welcome D to the show. Hey, D, what's going on?
Hey, Earl, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be chatting with you this evening.
Oh, yes, it is. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you. It's been a while since I've seen you, but it is good to hear you, and it's always good to connect with you.
Oh, likewise.
Okay, so we are going to start the show off with one of the things that I ask all of my guests on the show, and I want you to give me, D, your favorite literary quote and why.
Okay, so I will say my favorite literary quote comes from Maya Angelou, and it says, "I believe that each of us comes from the Creator, trailing wisps of glory." And I really like this quote simply because she is telling folks that we all have a talent or a gift. Some of us waste it, some of us shine in it, and some of us simply need to just tap into it. So for me, this speaks volumes in terms of being a favorite quote, that it's the awakening of what lies within us, and we all have a talent.
Oh, that's a wonderful quote. I've never heard that one by her, but I'm glad you shared
Really?
it. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that with us. That is absolutely wonderful, and your explanation of it is even better. That's like, I love that idea of having, something within us, and that is just a wonderful, wonderful quote.
Yes, it is.
So this part, now we're going to go into talking about tell us what your most recent creative work is, and give us a little bit more about your book.
Sure. So it's been a while. So the most recent novel that came out is called Gotta Get It Back, which is a sequel to my debut novel, Gotta Let It Go. And Gotta Get It Back kind of picks up the story with former prosecutor Deidre Hunter. Pretty much she can't leave well enough alone. So this time, her longtime mentor, a prominent judge, is found dead in his Baltimore home. And of course, Deidre goes on hell-bent on tracking down his killer. She never wants to wait for the wheels of justice to turn, and she just dives right in to launch her own investigation. This time, it puts her at odds with a conniving wealthy socialite who may hold the key to solving the murder. And because this is a romantic suspense novel, of course, so tension is going to mount between her when she obtains a clue from her ex-husband and withholds it from her lover, Detective Hill Harris. So it's a lot of drama going on, and the more that Deidre plunges in to try to solve this murder, the more she falls deeper into a web of lies, lust, and betrayal.
Ooh.
So gotta get it back. Gotta get it back. Pretty much said, with danger surrounding her and, mistrust creating a wedge in her relationship with Hill, the bottom line is, will she ever get back what she values most? So that's what Gotta Get It Back is all about. And I'm so excited to share information about the characters and about the book in general in this interview.
Oh, wonderful! Wow, you said a lot there, and there's a lot to wonderful things to unpack there. With trying to get back trying to get back what's most important to someone, and those sorts of things. That is just awesome. So, so my next question is, I think you answered a little bit in your explanation, but I'm going to ask the question again to give you a chance to give a little more detail. Where did you get the inspiration for the work, Gotta Get It Back? Because you were talking about, suspense and, political intrigue a little bit in there. And I want to know, where do you get the inspiration for that sort of stuff?
Okay, well, folks who know me know that I'm an avid reader, and I really love suspense type, thrillers type shows, investigation, discovery, as you read in my bio. And so the inspiration, just picking up back from where I left off and Gotta Let It Go, is basically to put Deidre in a situation where there is romance and where there's suspense. So the inspiration is taken from the political climate in and around Baltimore. It's about human relationships and how she's going to navigate life between, now that she's divorced from her ex-husband, and charting on a journey on a new relationship. So the inspiration comes from all of those things. And so Gotta Get It Back, you throw some stuff at her. It's about family, it's about relationships, and all that is around us each and every day. But I wanted to kind of zero in on the political climate, simply because she's a former prosecutor, and there's always someone, getting murdered that's close to her. So the inspiration is getting her back into the mix of things, and I think that I think it's an interesting mix to put her in this time around, where it's someone who's close to her and someone who's a longtime mentor.
Yeah, because I know when I was reading the book, I was like, "Oh my goodness, what's going to happen next?"
I know.
I was reading it, and I was like, "Ooh, okay, all right. Let me see where it's going." Yeah, there is an awful lot going on, and that brings me to one of the things that I noticed in your work, and in the book, Gotta Get It Back. It infuses so much mystery, some sensuality, and a whole lot of suspense. And I wanted to know, as a writer, what pulled you towards this particular genre of romantic suspense? Can you tell us, were you, when you were a young person, were these just the type of books you enjoyed, or did someone introduce you to the genre? What was it that pulled you to, this genre instead of saying, historical fiction or something?
Horror. I would say that I've always been an avid reader. Ever since as a kid, I could write. Was thrust into a book was thrust at me. I'm constantly at the library, and I oftentimes would pick up the Nancy Drews, the Hardy Boys.
I loved those books, reading those books.
Oh
my God. I loved the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys mysteries. When I was growing up, I loved reading those books, but go ahead.
Yeah, so that was like the genesis, and then as I got older, then you started to read the Jackie Collins, and then of course, you put my love of movies, like The Bodyguard, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, So for me, it represents the best of what I love, the best of both worlds in terms of romance going side by side with the action or with the suspense built in. So, like I said, the genesis was there, so it's just a matter of layering, and I think it represents what I truly love to read, especially as it relates to people of color.
Oh, wow. Wonderful. You know what? It makes me think about, at one point in my life, I was working at a local library. And one of the things that I loved about being at the library was that, you could sit and read and no one, really bothered you about it.
There you go. There you go. And I think for me, I love being on the edge. It's not enough to be romantically involved. I'm like, okay, let's throw some problems. Let's throw some challenges at my characters. So, and that's why I said it definitely represents the best of both worlds for me.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that I found in your book as I was reading it, because sometimes I like to read as a writer would. And, looking at, the structure of the story and the craft and, the subtext and sub-themes and that sort of thing. And so one of the things that I noticed is you have a sub-theme that deals with a little bit of human sexuality and sexual behavior, specifically how we can sometimes use sex as a weapon. And my question is, what do you want the readers to take away when it comes to relationships and impulsive behaviors? Because, your protagonist, there were times where she was very impulsive. I was like, oh my God, this character just like jumps right in. I mean, she likes, acts first, thinks later.
Yep, that she does. That she does. But you know what's interesting, Earl? I think one of the key elements in writing romantic suspense is to look at human sexuality, and you want to look at, you can't have relationships without delving into how two people get together and how they play off of each other sexually. And I think that's so important. But in this particular book, you saw the impulsiveness. You saw that the antagonist was wielding and doing things by trying to blackmail because of pictures of a sexual nature. And I would tell readers, in real life, just be mindful of your actions. We live in a very digital age and we're very voyeuristic. So everything that we say and do are immediately captured for the world to see. So it's like impulsive behavior. I would say with Deidre, I don't know how she didn't get locked up, to be honest. I mean, that she could have even lost her job and, she could have been embarrassed, so you have to be very mindful when you just go off on a tangent, anything, you have to be mindful of the consequences because there are consequences, that she actually put herself and her family in danger at some points. And as it relates to the human sexuality, sexual behavior, that's a very powerful tool that people will try to wield. And if you're not strong enough to say, you know what, so what? You blackmail me, I'm just going to rise above. As you can see with Kim Kardashian, hey, that didn't really hurt her,
Yeah.
So, but not too many of us will be that fortunate. But my takeaway to readers is just be mindful of your actions.
Yeah. I'm going to back up a little bit. One of the interesting things you said there that I would like to go back and just, point out or unpack a little bit. One of the things that you mentioned is, we're voyeuristic. And that is just a human behavior or a characteristic that's common to all of mankind, I think, that we all, for lack of better words, want to peep into other people's lives and peep into what they're doing. And, I think that is this obsession of human beings to compare ourselves, to what others are doing. And with your novel, it allows us to even be more voyeuristic as we look into the lives of these characters. And and that's what a book really is like peeking inside the lives of these fictional characters and seeing what they're doing. And for some reason, as a species, we find that incredibly satisfying. We find there's something magical about that, and even as you go back, as you mentioned about being mindful on, in the world we live in and social media posts, I think that's one of the reasons why social media is so addictive. Because it's like we as human beings, we get to look into all of this and look at people and sort of live vicariously through them the same way we do in a book. Because as I was living vicariously through your protagonist, I found myself saying, "Would I do that? Oh, that would be really bold of me to do something like that." And you find a way to put yourself, into those characters' shoes and walk with them and be with them. And again, there's just something voyeuristic and very, very satisfying about that. And with that being said, my next question is one that I saw in your work. There was this whole theme of power, people having power, and got to get it back. I want to ask you a particular question because power is such a powerful and seductive thing, and some people, when they get power, it changes them in a positive way, and with other people, it changes them in a negative way. And I want, your perspective on why do you think power impacts people differently?
That's a great question. And I think power impacts people in different ways based on their ability to handle it. I also think it's a shift in how they see things once they've gained power, and especially when they have control to say and do things and kind of, be all-knowing. So if power is in the wrong hands, it can be very detrimental. However, I think if it's in the right hands and it's wielded properly, it can be used in a more positive way. People have to be very mindful of how power is used. Mrs. Weatherstone, knowing her background, you could understand how when she got in that position of power, why she acted the way she acted based on her backstory. So power can be very powerful, like you said.
Yes. Yeah.
However, it's all in how it's wielded. It's all in how it's handled. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. And speaking of Mrs. Weatherstone, you created a character that readers will love to hate. This woman, made me. Well, first of all, she was bold as shit. I mean,
Yes, she was.
She
very bold.
I mean, she stood. I mean, it was like when she walked in the room. I mean, the air got sucked out. I mean, and to have a character who has that kind of power, and then looks at you like, "I'm coming your way. I'm the hurricane you can't avoid. I'm the tornado. I am the tornado that's whipping your world in different ways." And then to have, the protagonist stand there like, "I am concrete. I am solid in my foundation. You can huff and puff and blow all you want to, but I know who I am." But this character, Mrs. Weatherstone, I tell you, some of the stuff she did, I was like, "Now come on." She called just come up on somebody and just talk to him and says, "Here's what you gonna do for me," and then you say, "No, I'm not," and then she says, "Don't worry, you will be back." Yeah. How did you come up with this woman? Was this based on someone you know?
Oh my goodness! you know what? Interestingly enough, Mrs. Weatherstone, when I was crafting Gotta Get It Back, I said, let me get an antagonist who is someone that's sophisticated, someone that you would love to hate. And so when I sat down, because I was watching a lot of ID, investigation discovery shows, and especially when I was watching like Wives with Knives.
Wives with Knives? I've never Wives. I've heard of Snapped, but not Wives with Knives.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my goodness!
Deadly Vows, and I'm telling you, you will definitely be addicted. But anyway. So I would watch and see how some of these women would just get married and after a while, hated their spouse and wanted to get out of the relationship. And the things that they would do, they would create smoke screens and then pretend to be so soft and demure. But they were so devious. And so the idea came to me to create a character like a composite of some of these women that I would see. And in building her, there are a couple things that I wanted when I'm creating a character like that. I have a character questionnaire that I use. And I asked them a series of questions. I said, okay, Catherine Weatherstone, who are you? I am making her a real person. I'm making her believable. I'm making her someone who has flaws, weaknesses, fears. I take a look at her backstory. What would make her act the way that she does in terms of motivation in my novel? I created her physical characteristics, the way she walked. Like you said, she commanded a room.
Oh, yeah, she did.
What was it? She did. Her attire, especially at the masquerade ball, she was flawless. Her tone, the jewelry that she would wear. And when you put her to interact with the other characters in the book, that speaks volume, and I think it created depth in the story. And so readers could get to see her leap off the page, and I'm sure they would see some folks in her that they could recognize and say, hey, I know her. I know someone like her. And, to make her believable, to make her full of flaws, weaknesses, and fears, because that's what humans are. So you can't have a cookie-cutter, flat character. My characters will want to leap off the page.
Yeah, Mrs. Weatherstone actually reminded me of a former boss I had. Oh my God!
I was gonna say your boss or someone like that who was like a micromanager or something like that, and then you would wonder, well, what's her backstory? Why is she acting the way that she's acting? And so that's why, Mrs. Weatherstone is relatable.
Yeah,
to some degree.
And it's funny, when you get around people like that in the natural or in real life, your behavior changes. When you're
yes, it does.
when you're around people like that, you put on a different mask because to some degree, I think you almost go into a self-protection mode, or at least you're ready for combat. You might have to skip conflict and go straight to combat. And whenever Mrs. Weatherstone came on the page, I didn't want to have a conflict with her. I wanted to go into combat. I wanted cannon fire to start going off. I'm like,
I enjoyed writing her, and it almost makes you feel sorry for her in some regards. But she is a type of woman where she's a no-nonsense kind of person, that she demanded and commanded certain things from people. So it's either you're going to fall under her spell or you're going to try to match up with her, but know it's going to be a tough match.
Yeah. Know that you've gotten into a fight with that. And speaking of that, with your protagonist that you've created, I envisioned your protagonist as like a reimagined Lois Lane, who didn't need the Superman. She was intelligent, she was fearless, and she knew how to get what she wanted. And she had to be equally as strong, but even in her strength and her boldness, I still found myself fearing for her. I was like, girl, don't do that. Don't wait, think about this for a minute. Like, wait a minute. Call your man. What's wrong with you?
She is so headstrong, Earl. It's ridiculous. But readers have come to expect this from her. So if she changes, folks will be like, Delia, what are you doing? So she needed to be the kind of unpredictable character with a strong sense of self and a strong sense of justice. And that's how I created her. I wanted readers to see her gaining, especially from book number 1. She went through the divorce, and that was shattering for her. So the divorce is happening. Her best friend and divorce attorney gets murdered, and it's like, how does she rise above that through strength, intelligence, and her fearless attitude to solve that murder? So I wanted readers to have that in mind when I wrote book number 2.
Yeah, and she went into the park.
Have her navigate life with that strong sense of self and strong sense of justice.
Yeah, because, at one point she went into the park at night after she got a strange phone call. I was like, girl, don't go in the park. What's wrong with you? That's where it happens at in the park. That's why they get you.
They really get you. They really get you because she didn't even care. She was just gung-ho, and she's like, I am going to solve this murder, and especially I am going to get Mrs. Weatherstone by hell or by high water. It doesn't matter.
Even when her daddy said, don't mess with that woman, honey. Just leave her alone. Don't mess with her. And she's like, Daddy, I got this. Okay, I got this. Okay, so my next question for you is going to, be a few questions about you as a writer and stuff like that. So here's my next question for you. If you could travel back in time and have coffee with any writer, who would you have that cup of coffee with?
Maya Angelou. She's one of my favorites. I just think that she lived such a rich life. It was just interesting for me to watch her journey from growing up poor to where she ended up at the point where, when she died like 4 years or so ago. But just to watch her life experiences. She was a singer, dancer, poet, writer, activist. She spoke different languages. She traveled. Yeah, so I think that if I could definitely travel back in time, I would just like to sit back and just have her talk.
Yeah, and she
share her experiences with me.
And she had some romantic suspense in there too.
In
her lifetime.
Yeah, some of it was very real, very real.
Yeah, some of it was very real
with her marriages. So
yes.
Yeah.
So well, that just makes her.
Woman.
Yeah, it makes her very human. Next question: what is your favorite book? A book that you can read time and again.
Time and again, and for me, time and again, and timeless. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Again, Maya Angelou.
That was a powerful
back
book.
To her because I wrote a piece when I was in college on that. And I just couldn't get enough. Mm-hmm. I think it gave readers a snapshot of her life, again, growing up poor, and just laying the foundation for her hopes and dreams. So when I read the other biographies, it made sense just to watch her journey from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings to Singing and Swinging and Get Married with Christmas, to just watch her transition from a young girl, teenager, an adult, and how she navigated life. So I would say I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, definitely.
Yeah.
I could read that time and time again.
Time and time. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. So if no one's read that book, I highly recommend it. Okay, Dee, so we're going to come to the portion of the show now where we will where we ask that you take a section of your book that you want to give readers a taste, just a taste of the book. Gotta get it back. All right, you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ramsey eased the limousine through the gates and up the long driveway. He stopped in front of a magnificent European stone manor with a tiered water fountain in the courtyard. He got out and opened my door. When I stepped out, I stood in marvel of the multi-million-dollar luxury house which made my home look like a tiny shack. Go on, Mrs. Weatherstone is waiting for you. I turned and gave Ramsey a smile before he got back into the limousine and drove away. I walked up to a massive door with a tiny doorbell. I pressed the doorbell, and to my surprise, Mrs. Weatherstone answered it herself. Well, hello, Deidre. She stepped back to allow me to come in. I know you were probably expecting a maid. Yes, I do have a few, but I told them to take the night off. I can manage. Mrs. Weatherstone was elegantly dressed in a flowing white satin pantsuit and 2-inch heels as if ready for some late-night trip. Her hair was near perfect, with only a wisp that fell over her right eye out of place. The decor of the grandiose hallway was impressive. The ornate glass and crystal chandelier that hung from the high ceiling reflected the beautiful ambient light, and the recessed lighting led up to a well-polished staircase. The walls were decorated with rare and expensive art pieces by Gauguin, Picasso, and Van Gogh. The built-in display shelves exhibited statues, sculptures, and under a dramatic lighting. Mrs. Weatherstone, you have quite the collection here, I said. I was impressed. Old money? Yes, dear. I see you appreciate the finer things. By the way, you can call me Catherine. I think we're going to be very good friends. Got to give it to Mrs. Weatherstone. She is one confident broad. Well, why not? So, Catherine, now that we're friends, correction, dear. I said, I think we're going to be good friends. We're not quite there yet, but go on. I was admiring the artwork around your home. Instead of Van Gogh, my eyes were drawn to the vibrant colors and the swirling motion of the Starry Night mosaic mural hanging on the wall. Yes, you've got an eye for art. My husband was a collector. I simply went along with what he wanted. Charles thought himself an artist, but he couldn't paint worth a damn. So this, she waved her hand around the room, this is what he spent his money on. Catherine let out a sinister laugh that made me cringe, but I kept my cool so I could find out what she really wanted from me. Some tea, perhaps some water or a glass of wine, she asked. I'm good. On second thought, some water would be fine. Coming right up, have a seat in the parlor. She waved toward a very large room off to the left of the hallway. Here you go, my dear. The water was served in a crystal water goblet that sat on an antique silver serving tray. She set the tray down, then moved to sit across from me, her legs crossed and one arm draped along the backside of the Chase Lounge. Her other hand held a long-stem wine glass. She looked like a 20s movie star. The only thing missing was a cigarette. I took a sip and waited. So by now you know that Judge Hart has died. I nodded. Sad indeed. He was such a good friend. As Mrs. Weatherstone took a moment to reflect, I wondered how they knew each other and why I somehow was caught in the middle of it. Ah, such memories. Anyway, business must go on, and here's where you come in. She raised the glass to her lips and took a long, savoring sip. This was really getting tedious, but as my father always said, patience is a virtue, and he would be very proud to know I was really trying. You see, Judge Hart was an investor in a retreat that I, along with a few close friends of mine, would like to build in Virginia. He knew all the right people to expedite things. Now that he's gone, his investment will probably be pulled by his estate, so I'd like you to buy in. Catherine, my business is old and it's home, but I don't think I have the kind of cash you think I do. Oh, don't worry about it. If you don't have the money to invest, then maybe there's something else you could do, such as my eyebrows arched. Well, it's something of a more delicate nature. My back stiffened, and I moved closer to the edge of the sofa. How delicate. Catherine cleared her throat. You have lots of friends, don't you, like that Trixie person? Trixie? How did she know who Trixie was, and better yet, why was it relevant to this conversation? Trixie was an exotic dancer who had done me a favor going undercover at the Kitty Cat Club after I was attacked outside my home. She had been my eyes and ears getting me key information into the murder of my best friend. And to hear her name again conjured up the scene where I went to the club and had a confrontation with Kyle's mistress, Latasha. That night didn't go well as a fire broke out and I was almost overcome by smoke and in danger of being trampled on until I was rescued by Hill. Sternly, I said, how do you know about Trixie? Well, she's good at what she does as a stripper, and I need girls like her. She paused. And guys, too, to perform at the retreat every now and then. I stood, grabbed my purse, and gave her the side eye. You might be white, but she knew exactly what she might be white, but she knew exactly what the look meant, because in a moment she rose and came face to face with me. I think you need to sit down and hear what I have to say before jumping to conclusions. I prefer to stand, thank you. I folded my arms, not sure of what was to come. The retreat is really a spot for the rich and sexy, she said. She winked at me. You know, a place where they go to relax and indulge in all things carnal. What the hell? All things carnal? And she wants me to do what? This was getting crazier by the minute. Not even Angela could believe this. Mrs. Weatherstone was nothing but a pimp, and the worst kind, a wealthy pimp with clout in the community, which made her even dangerous. And I'm going to stop there.
Oh, man. See, that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm talking about. You could have, this woman invites her to her house and then basically says, you know what? I want to put you on foot patrol for the rich and sexy. I was like, who does that? Mrs. Weatherspoon does that.
She does that.
Yeah.
She does that. She was a very fun character to write. So I'm glad that readers, really enjoy her.
Yes. So speaking of readers, give us some information on where we can purchase your novel. Gotta Get It Back. Give us, where they can download it, where they can buy it, your website information.
Sure. So my books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Or if anyone's interested in getting an autographed copy, just send me an email at DLAW, M as in Mary, B as in boy, A as in apple, @gmail.com. Readers can connect with me. My website, www.authordeelawrence.com. Facebook, Author D. Lawrence, as well as Instagram, Author D. Lawrence. I would love to hear from folks. I definitely, if I get an email, I respond right away. So it will be a joy to connect with folks, even on Facebook.
Wonderful, wonderful. And also, I'll put that information in the show notes when the podcast gets uploaded so that folks can easily find you and your work. Well, Dee, I want to thank you so very much for being my guest on A Reader's Paradise. It has been a plum-pleasing pleasure to have this conversation with you and to talk to you about your work and the craft of writing. I really appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much, Earl. It was a pleasure to hang out with you tonight. Thank you so much.
So, folks, thanks for joining and thanks for listening. And don't forget to click the subscribe button for the podcast and also leave us a comment so that other people can find the show. Again, until next time, I'll see you in the next episode. But you don't have to take my word.